Hello, this is wmpyr. Originally, I wanted to do Bruce Lee versus Michael Jai White, but instead, I'm going to do Bruce Lee versus Chuck Norris. This is a very popular subject on YouTube, and anyway, I want to share my 2 cents because I feel that my perspective is a little bit different than the normal. So, yeah, hopefully this will be entertaining or useful in some way, shape, or form. Okay, so Chuck Norris was this unbelievable North American karate champion. He wasn't just a champion who did that a couple of times. I mean, he was a stellar champion. I mean, his accomplishments are awesome. They're incredible. And you have to understand, I mean, people can criticize and say, "Oh, that's point fighting," but what he did back in the day was the equivalent of the UFC today. There was nothing like that back in the day. And when you're talking about now your backhands, ridge hand strikes, I'm sure you could do palm strikes and all kinds of kicks and stuff. I mean, you just didn't have that. It was just boxing and wrestling, and then to be doing something like that, it was really, this was martial arts. This was like anything and everything goes almost. And that's what that was back in the day. So that's what he did, and he was an amazing competitor, and I think that Bruce Lee totally admired that because there is a letter that Bruce Lee wrote and signed, and he says a lot of great things about Chuck Norris, and he's excited that Chuck Norris is coming out in this movie, someone with those real martial arts credentials. So unless Bruce Lee's totally two-faced and he was like, "Yeah, Chuck Norris, you're totally awesome," but behind his back he's like, "Yeah, I could kick this guy's ass," I don't think Bruce Lee was that petty, and I don't think he was that way. So I think he really did sincerely admire the guy, and that's why he also affiliated himself with Chuck Norris. So he respected the guy. So in other words, I believe that Bruce Lee thought that Chuck Norris was indeed one of the best in the world. Okay, so that's a very important point that I want to make. So from Bruce Lee's eyes, Chuck Norris, Joe Louis, those guys were amongst the best martial artists in the world. Okay, now the other thing is, people would like to say, well, you know, Bruce Lee, he actually had some competition experience. I don't think so. I don't think that whatever he did, the boxing tournament he did in Hong Kong, can compare to Chuck Norris's North American karate circuit career that he had. It's just no comparison. Plus, how old was Bruce Lee when he did that? How many times did he do it? What were the level caliber of opponents and stuff like that? I'm not saying that that didn't have an impact on Bruce Lee. I'm sure he learned a lot from it. You could compete at the highest levels of like UFC or whatever, and you may not learn anything from it. That's just individual. I think Bruce Lee learned a lot from it. That's great for him. But if you just look at it objectively, just the sport competition that he did versus the sport competition that Chuck did is no comparison. Chuck all the way. Okay. Now the other argument I hear is Bruce Lee was a street fighter. Well, even if he was, which I don't think he was, but even if he was, comparing a street fighter versus a professional fighter to me is no competition as well. Let's take a look at Kimbo Slice, arguably one of the best street fighters in North America. Maybe you could just say he was the best in Florida, but let's say in North America he was one of the best street fighters here in the USA. He couldn't make it to the top levels of the UFC. So professional fighter versus street fighter, you see, that's the difference right there. So even if Bruce Lee was, I still think Chuck Norris all the way. However, once again, I don't think Bruce Lee was. Do you think Bruce Lee was a Tank Abbott and Kimbo Slice, that he was like those guys? I don't think so. I don't think he got into bar fights every weekend. I don't think he got into backyard fights where they were betting money. I don't think he was doing Lionheart, like the movie Lionheart. I don't think he was doing underground fights like that. He was a teacher, and he couldn't afford that kind of reputation. So I'm pretty sure that's not what Bruce Lee did. Okay, so I wouldn't call him a street fighter. I'd say he was a self-defense expert who believed that he could actually defend himself in real life. So that's different from a street fighter. But I believe that he could totally believed that he could handle himself in a real life situation. And that came about, one of the reasons why I say that his psychology there is because on the set of Green Hornet, and they did a crossover with Batman, the guy that played Robin acted like he was the real deal, and that really upset Bruce Lee, who the people on the set said he's normally very high energy, joking, and he's a real cool guy. And all of a sudden, when he heard the guy say something like that, he felt very disrespected, and he suddenly changed his demeanor, and he was super upset at the guy. So that to me means that he took that martial arts and self-defense very seriously. So in his eyes, he saw a guy who was a Hollywood actor, so to speak, pretending to be the real thing. But in his eyes, he probably feels that he is, yes, he's trying to be a Hollywood actor, but he's also the real thing. So to see a faker do this really made him angry. You see what I'm saying? So he considers himself the real deal. But still, so far, because of Chuck Norris's competition accomplishments, I would say Chuck Norris all the way so far. But there's two things that I want to mention here, and they really, to me, are keys. Okay, number one is that Bruce Lee trained with Chuck Norris. That changes things big time. When you've actually trained with the person, now Bruce Lee knows what it takes, what it's actually like, what kind of skill sets Chuck Norris has to become world champion. So it's different from me watching a football game and going, yeah, if I worked out a little bit, I could probably be an NFL player, which is, I'm talking out of my butt, okay? I've only played football in high school, and not as the team. I was just like in PE and stuff. They made me play it. So that's all I have in my experience, okay? I have no idea how difficult it is to make it to the NFL. I can only imagine. I assume it's incredibly difficult. Just think of how much they get paid. And to become NFL Hall of Fame, I could just imagine how the bar is so high up. And same with Chuck Norris's tournament competition experience, being karate champion. The bar is incredibly high up. Same with like UFC today. To become something like that, a UFC top 10 competitor or even UFC champ, the bar is incredibly high. Probably, I don't know, is it 1 in a million? I can't even imagine how many people can actually make it that far. It's probably incredibly low, okay? So maybe way more than that, okay? The odds are incredibly against you. So you have to understand that, and I believe Bruce Lee understood that, but once you train, he's actually seen it. So it's like me, who's actually worked out with the NFL guys. Then I will know what it takes. So I think Bruce Lee understood that. He sparred with Chuck Norris. Yes, it wasn't to kill each other, but he got to experience all that. So that's huge. I'm not saying that Bruce Lee could go enter a karate tournament and do what Chuck Norris did. No, absolutely not. I'd say no, he cannot. Zero, okay? If he could have, he would have. But he understands what it took, okay? And now there's number two, very peculiar point, is in an interview, Bruce Lee said something along the lines of, I'm not going to say I'm the best in the world, but I'm not going to say I'm not. Something along those lines, right? So basically he's saying he's one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world, right? How could he say that? Why would he say something like that if he didn't believe it? Is he just trying to hype up his movies? I don't think so. I think he really believes that. I don't think he's a two-faced guy who just lies. I don't think so. So I really do believe that he really felt that he was, at the time, one of the best in the world. And it makes sense to me because he trained with Chuck Norris and Joe Louis and some of the best martial artists in North America at the time. So he trained with some of the best, and he sparred with them and stuff, and he probably got to the point where he figured out, like, hey, I could hang with these guys. So if he could hang with these guys, he probably thought, hey, I'm one of the best in the world. And what he's talking about is not he could enter a karate tournament and win it. No, that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about self-defense, right? In self-defense, what do you need to do? You need to survive. So on the street, if he had to go up against Chuck Norris for some reason, from his training with Chuck Norris, I think he found out, hey, I know what he's going to do to me, and I know the level of athlete that he's at and what kind of workouts he does and stuff like that. I know his determination. I know things about him. I know what it takes that I could just survive against him. He doesn't have to knock him out. He doesn't have to dominate the guy. He doesn't even really have to attack the guy. In martial arts, self-defense, you just need to survive. Could he have done that? I think he could have. I think on the street, he could have just survived. Then it makes sense that he says, yes, I am one of the best in the world, because he's worked out with Chuck, understands what Chuck is capable of, and in his mind, Chuck is one of the best in the world, and he could hang with a guy. And then on top of that, Bruce Lee was training street techniques and stuff, which could help him even more in a street survival type situation. I'm not saying he would take out Chuck on the street, but I'm saying it would help him even more if he's going for eye jabs and kick to the groins and stuff like that. It's going to help him even more to survive. And if he can do that, now it makes sense to me that he's saying he believes he's one of the best in the world at the time. So, yeah, so in the street, I do believe that Bruce Lee was one of the best in the world during that era. And I believe that Chuck Norris was one of the best in the world at that time as well. And could Bruce Lee have done what Chuck Norris did, like winning karate championships like Chuck did? I don't think so. I don't think so. But could he have survived a street fight, hence win, being the smaller guy? If you survive a street fight against someone like Chuck Norris, that's a victory right there. Could he have done that? I absolutely believe so. So anyway, that's it for now. Thank you for listening, and take care, folks.